You are listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. I'm Elena Paweta, Executive Communication Coach and TEDx organizer. With each episode, I'll share with you communication tips and ideas from top business leaders to help you excel in your career. Hello. Welcome to the next episode of Ideas and Leaders podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Brandy Burch. She's the founder and CEO of benefitbay, specializing in employee benefits and health insurance. And today, we're going to speak about entrepreneurship, about being a female founder, about challenges of entrepreneurship, and solutions and tips. Hi, Brandy. It's great to have you on Ideas and Leaders.
Hi, Elena. Thanks for having me.
So let's start by telling your story to our listeners. What is your success story? How did you get to be where you are right now?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, a non-traditional journey. I really didn't see myself as an entrepreneur, and that's not really something that I strived or dreamed of being in the history. I came out of school to be an accountant and took a traditional path up through, staff accountant to controller to VP of finance to CFO. And I found that I had a lot of strengths in the operating seat that really pertained to the human capital side of the business. And that human capital side of the business is where I've really learned a lot of that insurance acumen and benefits expertise. I also was a strong human capital first leader. And I think in that finance seat, it's not always the case that really people care about the people who drive the performance of that business. And as I continued to solve problems for the people within a business or for the customers or the vendors, I found myself even more and more loving the operator seat, less than just the numbers. I found myself in software. And then that software turn led me to the opportunity to be in this founding seat and be promoted to the CEO from the operations lead role. And I think that non-traditional path is something that led me here without having to really digest all the risks that are involved in entrepreneurship, because there are a lot. And had I put some pen to paper, I may not have chosen to take this big jump, but I was asked to under circumstances that were really, to be honest, insurmountable odds. But I was also in a circumstance where it was do this or let people down. So I think that part of my personality is what led me to actually fulfilling this journey. If I would have just sat down and made an analytical decision, I wouldn't have said, let's go start a company and face all of these obstacles. I probably wouldn't have chosen that for myself. So I think being forced into the situation is what's given me the wings to really fly without the time to think about all of those pieces. But it's 100% something that is a lot harder than people think, to run a business, to be the entrepreneur, to have all of those obstacles coming at you at various times.
Yes. So thank you for being honest. And I think that very often we find ourselves in our careers in situations that we did not plan, or completely change the track and completely change the industry. And it is so not obvious that the place where we end up, the place where we started, are completely different. So you have indeed a very interesting journey. So what would you recommend to our listeners who are in the corporate world and who are thinking of starting their own business? Because I know that there are a lot of corporate leaders who are thinking about this. So what should we be thinking of? What should we make sure to take care of before diving into this?
Yeah, I think number one, your personal situation needs to have the capacity to ebb and flow from a financial risk perspective. The ability to earn that stable income or that stable paycheck is not always there in entrepreneurship. If the business is not meeting expectations or didn't meet the revenue metrics for the month, or you need to bite off some capital spend, it has to come from somewhere, and you have to make those tough decisions sometimes that affect yourself. So if I could have gone back to make the planning steps for this, I would have had, a certain amount of cash reserves in place. I would have made sure that I had no additional debt in my life that would cause myself any pressure. I would maybe even take out a home equity line of credit or something in advance so that I knew I had some type of fallback plan should something go awry and I need to skip a paycheck or two inside the company. In this organization, I've had to defer comp more than one time. And I think that sometimes people's personal life would not be able to sustain that. And I think that's a key piece. I think the other piece is, make sure that your family can handle the sacrifices that are needed because you often have to wear multiple hats. You have to work multiple roles. You can't always hire the entire team. And so you've got to be the team and you've got to do admin tasks and you've got to do CFO tasks and you've got to do HR tasks and you've got to do operation tasks. And sometimes you find yourself in a product role because you don't have yet product people if you're in a tech company. And those types of stretches are not necessarily things that people can have in their life at all times. If you have a new infant or, maybe you also have a spouse that travels, it may not be something that you can take away from the kids at that time. So I think your personal life needs to be in a place that can handle this because there are some sacrifices that you're going to make as an entrepreneur and it's going to come. There's not a balance. It's going to come from some place. You can try your best to balance it, but there are going to be seasons where it's out of balance. And you want to make sure that taking an entrepreneurship journey does not destroy your personal family because we all need to take our family into consideration in that decision.
Yes, absolutely. So we need to be flexible in terms of our finances and in terms of our family. We need to be prepared for some
Yes.
sacrifices. So it is really very important because sometimes when we think about starting our entrepreneurial journey, we're thinking about freedom and freedom of choice and that we can work as many hours as we want, or we can skip a day and not work. And in fact,
Yes.
we end up working much more and longer hours and doing additional jobs, additional tasks, as you mentioned. So, what were the biggest challenges for you as you transitioned into the entrepreneurial path, and how did you manage them?
Yeah, I think, oh wow. Probably my top issue when I first came into this seat was imposter syndrome or feeling like I didn't have that CEO experience. I hadn't done it before. Like, am I qualified enough for this? Do I have the skills that are required? I think one of the key intimidators for me was the sales part of being a CEO. You're the
Mhm.
key storyteller. You're out, really the face of the company. You are the brand. And as an accountant, I'm naturally an introvert. And so those pieces were a huge stretch for me. You do have to be very extroverted in a CEO role or an entrepreneurship role because you're going to sell your customers. You're going to sell your vendors to take a risk on you if you don't have the capital profile. You're going to sell an investor to give you capital. You're going to work with banks, when you're not in the most established state, banks aren't going to give you capital. So you're going to have to go to an angel investor. You're going to have to go to venture capital investor. And you have to be able to tell your story well, and you have to get people to buy in on you. And I hadn't done sales in my background. So I think that those pieces were the ones that scared me the most. I was very confident in my ability to run a business. I was super confident in my ability to manage cash. I was, it wasn't something that intimidated me to build a team. I've done that, and recruit talent. I knew I could do those things. But the selling of the organization was the part that I'd always had someone in front of me doing that job. And so I wasn't sure of my skill set. What I quickly learned is that in the finance, you do develop that ability to sell to internal stakeholders, to vendors, to customers when you have to rein something in or change pricing. So I had stretched that skill set just in a different way. And in board presentations in public settings in previous roles, I had been in front of large audiences. So I can go and be on a panel discussion. It's not much different. I'm not usually having those really tough financial conversations coming back at me that are really hard that would normally be in that board situation. So I'm prepared for running a shareholder company because I've done that from the CFO seat. So some of those things were more transferable than I realized. And I think that's a place that's really allowed me to build my confidence because I got into those rooms and although those were unknown, I was able to pull from some past experiences.
Yeah, great, great. Thank you for sharing this. I think that
Mhm.
many listeners can relate to those challenges, and also for our female entrepreneurs and business leaders who are listening to us, what would you recommend? What are some of the challenges of being a female business leader, founder, entrepreneur? And do you see any specific gender specific challenges?
I do. I hate to say that I feel like I don't get the same at bats as my male counterparts, but I do believe I don't. I do believe the statistics tell the truth. Their VC funds, less than 2% go to females, even less than that to minorities. And I think there's some inherent biases in the community that aren't even realized. And so without a thesis at the investor level to really be conscious to make decisions towards female founders, firms that have had that thesis have made a bet on me. Firms that haven't have not. So I see that. I feel like we have to work a little bit harder to get that same investment dollar. We have to be a little bit further along. We have to have XYZ metrics in place. But maybe if I was on the other side of that equation, I would just get the instant term sheet, right? So I do think that has happened. I feel like I have been heavily dominated in my career in general in the financial sector. I've been in construction, manufacturing, and in technology. It's heavily male dominated. I do not feel like I'm disrespected at the table. I just feel like sometimes those opportunities are not equal and equivalent to others. And I think that we can see that. The statistics say that. I think from compensation to equity levels, all of that seems to be gender biased or gender differences. And I hope that we can continue to improve that. I myself have tried to be conscious of it, even from the CEO seat. I had all male leaders. They had been recruited prior to me joining that CEO role. I had been their equivalent partner or, at that VPC with them. And so I myself have to be conscious because 90% of the candidates do come in and they are male. So it is also that females aren't going for those opportunities. They aren't in that VC partner seat to make the decision. And the problem exists in all sides of the equation. So I'm pretty happy about recruiting my new chief of staff, who's a female, and recruiting a new director that's a female. So I'm trying to be conscious myself and then do more diversity hires. And I think it's just easy to end up with hiring managers and everyone hiring people who are most like them. And we don't realize that we all do it. And so just being conscious, I think it just takes a conscious effort to ensure that we're ending up with all different types of humans at the table, because that's where you get the best for a company.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. It is so important to have diversity in our teams, diversity of opinions, backgrounds,
Yeah.
and definitely it is more beneficial for the company, for the team. So yeah, there are a lot of challenges and different aspects connected with the entrepreneurship. What would you recommend? What is your advice to our listeners who are planning to maybe have an idea or starting a new endeavor? So what would you recommend them to think about, to plan, is there any strategy that you would recommend to follow?
Yeah, I would recommend that they stretch skills that they're weak in, because we all tend to lean where we're strong,
Hmm.
and the problems are going to come to place in places where you're weak. And so try to either on your preparation journey, try new things, do skills that are traditionally not in your role of authority, get involved in projects that are outside of somewhere where you're really strong to try to stretch that. I think also just doing hard things regularly rather than, continuing to do status quo or what's the easiest for your work-life balance will have you prepared for the grit it takes to be an entrepreneur. I think entrepreneurship is very highs and lows. and you have to be able to get back up from that low. It's a lot of rejection because you're selling and because it's something new that you're developing. So you're going to have competitors, you're going to have, objections in the market. And if you have an idea, test the idea, test the idea for, what we call product market fit, right? Would your friends buy from you? Would your colleagues buy from you? Is this something that solves a problem that you've been aware of? What are the ways that you can test the waters a little bit before you just dive all in? And I think a lot of people probably need to keep some source of income if they're going to start from the complete beginning with trying to bootstrap. I do recommend bootstrapping. When you are in the face of venture capital, you do have a majority of bosses who at any time could remove you from your own company. So there are, and that's what happened in benefitbay's journey with our original CEO. So that is something that I would say absolutely consider. What can you build on your own and maybe with friends and family dollars to get it off the ground? And what can you build while you're still able to earn some type of income from consulting? I don't recommend anyone do conflict of interest type behavior. That's my HR and CFO talking. But I think that there are a lot of ways that you could work as a fractional in your competency while you're starting that entrepreneurship journey. And that would allow you to have the best of both worlds and still bring in money, but have the freedom to be building your own company.
Yes, yes. I think that this transition is the key always, how to manage the transition, whether to start immediately or to continue or to do both things at the same time. I think that this
Right.
is what many people struggle with. And also you mentioned some challenges connected with work-life balance, with long working hours and family. What are your recommendations for people who are just entering entrepreneurship world? How to manage all this?
Yeah, I think have your support network ready, whether that's your spouse or your children or, your family or, a neighbor up the street. I think it takes a village for you to start a company. It's really hard to do just all on your own without that support network. I think having a mentor available to help you not bring that home to your family. So, on those stressful days, talk to someone who's done it before, talk to someone who's been successful or who's failed and then succeeded, or, that can talk you off of those tough, areas where you get stuck, a little bit and like, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this anymore, and so they'll talk you back into believing in yourself and you can still do this. I think the thing for me that's been the hardest is I am a mom and I do have an 11-year-old. My older children are older and a little more self-sufficient, and my twins just left for college. I have noticed this year has been the toughest with the travel required to be out there in market and selling and being a part of this journey. I used to feel a little better when her sisters were here with her, her twin sisters were here with her, and now she's the only one left at home. Although I had a large family, she's the last one home. And so when I leave, I feel like I'm leaving her rather than leaving, a network that's able to also be there together when mom's gone. She's now on her own here. And so that's been kind of tough this year and something I didn't realize. I would struggle with. It's kind of a season that were the first couple of years of building this company. She's had her sisters here and they would drive her to school in the morning if it was a day that I was out of state, or, they would take that little bit of the burn for her to be having her mom gone so much. And then she would have sister bonding. And right now she's in a place where I have to lean on others to get her there. And so it's really tough in that window. And I think that just I have leaned on neighbors, that are friends that have the same kids the same age. And I think having that network around will really take that pressure off during your busy seasons. I'm not on the road all the time, but this is our window where I'm on the road fairly often, almost every week for at least 3 days. And so that can get really taxing on you. And I think that's been the hardest thing for me, is not wanting to miss those key things and not wanting her to feel like I'm choosing work over her. But we all have to choose our career, and you have to know what that looks like if you're going to go into entrepreneurship, right? What does that piece look like and how are you going to navigate those ebbs and flows? We can't always have the large team. That's the piece that I think most people aren't prepared for. When you work at a large company, you may dream of the freedom. Comes with less freedom out of the gate because you don't have a team and you can't take just PTO, right? The company doesn't shut off. You are the company until you've built enough of a team around you or have enough revenue to really be able to afford that team that's around you. And every hire that you bring on is more cost to the company. So those balances that you have to make that you didn't really make as a employee, even if you were a high level leader. You managed your budget that someone gave you from a larger capital expenditure. You didn't have to go find those funds or ensure those funds were there to be able to spend. And so that's just a transition that most people don't realize is going to be a lot tougher than they think. It sounds, I like to use this term, like everyone's made it sexy to be an entrepreneur. It's not, it's not that. It's a lot of sludge until you get to the fun. And so I think that that's the piece I try to help people understand.
Yes, absolutely. And you're so right. And I can so much relate to what you're saying. I think that there is a lot of this mental struggles, imposter syndrome, and feeling of guilt in terms of your family and children, and feeling of maybe doubt how am I going to make the next step because no one tells you what to do. And it is up to you which direction to go or whether to go or not. So I think that this mental aspect that we need to really be prepared for, to be mentally strong, to be ready to deal with all of those aspects indeed. So I could totally agree with this. Brandy, let's summing up our chat about entrepreneurship. What would be your top tips for entrepreneurs who are listening to us, business leaders who want to start a business? What would be your top 3 tips?
Top 3 tips, have your finances in order, whether that's capital from friends and family or angel investors, or whether it's bootstrapped from your own personal finances. So number 1, have your finances in order. Number 2, have done your research in regards to the problem you're solving and how you're going to solve it and whether or not that solution that you've developed is actually what the market's going to tolerate. Number 3, I think give yourself some grace. It's really hard and you're going to screw up sometimes and you're going to make the wrong decisions, fail fast, go forward, right? Every step, like it's just going to catapult you to the forward if you can continue to move forward at a fairly quick pace. I think anyone who's willing to go into entrepreneurship or go to high level leadership, we're really hard on ourselves. All of that is a waste of your time. Just keep all of that energy focused on your next step forward. No one is going to do this perfectly. It's just like parenting. There's no handbook. You've got to do your best, and then tomorrow will be a better day, and learn from those pieces. And I think if you're transparent and humble, it's going to work out for you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brandy. It was really an interesting conversation, and I think very valuable for people who are just in the beginning of their journey or considering starting. So if our listeners have additional questions, want to reach out, where is the best way to find you?
Yeah. So I have a personal Twitter and Instagram, and it's 6girls13 because I have 6 girls and I'm a mom out there doing this journey. But my business related is on LinkedIn. It's Brandy Burch, Burch is my last name, with benefitbay, or benefitbay.com if you want to learn a little bit more about the entrepreneurial journey that I'm on and the problem that we're solving in healthcare and benefits and personalized benefits for modern workers.
Great. Thank you so much, Brandy. It was such a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for being on Ideas and Leaders.
Thank you, Elena.
Thank you for listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. Did you enjoy this episode? Let me know that you listened by tagging me in your LinkedIn profile and using a hashtag Ideas and Leaders. See you in the next episode.